Hello students, welcome to Legacy IAS Academy. Today we are going to discuss about today's concluded UPSC Mains examination for paper GS1, and we are going to discuss about the questions that were asked in geography. So if you look at the questions, as we know that UPSC has followed the similar past trends and has asked two type of question. One, you have 10-mark question, and other you have 15-mark questions. So if you look at some of the 10-mark questions that was asked in UPSC, so one question that is similar to question that was asked in year 2018 mains examination. Again, it is linked directly to the syllabus. Also, it is a direct straightforward questions. That means if you have studied properly, it should not be difficult for you to answer this question. So question is, what are tsunamis? How and where are they formed? What are their consequences? And explain with examples. So basically this entire question, it is though of 10 marks only, it is divided into three major parts. So you have to ensure that you address each of these parts individually and give adequate weightage when you are structuring your answer. So first of all, if you look at in the introduction part, in introduction, you can discuss about the current affairs event. Whenever we are talking about natural disaster, and if you can think of any recent phenomena, recent events related to that, you can talk about this. So recently we know that in the month of August itself, we have seen a tsunami warning being issued in the Pacific region around the Kamchatka, where we have a high magnitude earthquake in Russia. That also is the region where we have volcanic eruption. So a tsunami warning was issued all across the countries such as Japan, Russia, United States, as well as Mexico. So you can start from there, and then you can briefly describe the tsunami by writing the proper definition. What is tsunami? So it is a series of waves that come one after other and affect the coastal areas. These are what you can call as velocity waves, and also they are high waves in terms of the wave height. Tsunami also you can describe as, the word comes from Japanese word. It is made up of two words, that is su plus nami, and su refers to harbor and nami refers to the high sea waves as such. That is how we can describe the first part. Second part is again two things: how and where do they form. So how part you have to simply write and state the regions behind it. That means what are the causes of tsunami. We know that there are 4 or 5 major causes, such as occurrences of earthquake in the ocean, occurrences of volcanic eruption, occurrences of landslides, you have ice fall, you have meteoritic impact. So all these factors can contribute to the development of tsunami. Where then you have to talk about the plate tectonics. Wherever we are having OC convergence, right? Wherever we are having oceanic convergence, we can talk about the entire Pacific Ocean, where you have subduction of Pacific plates below the North American plate, below the Eurasian plate, below the Australian plate. You can also talk about OC convergence by talking about the 2004 December tsunami, where you have subduction of Australian plate below the Burmese plate or Eurasian plate as such. And here, when you're talking about the O convergence, you can give example of 2011 tsunami. That was a very high scale tsunami, magnitude tsunami that occurred and affected the coastal areas of Japan, causing Fukushima disaster as well. So this should be the second part of your answer. Third is, what are the consequences? So consequences basically is nothing but you have to describe about the effects of tsunami as such. So effect is simple. Because tsunami causes such a high intensity impact of water, you'll have a large scale economic damages, you'll have the loss of life of people, and you have to discuss with examples. So we'll talk about 2004 tsunami, which have seen loss of life of more than 200,000 people in the Indian Ocean region. 14 countries are affected. Their economic damages, economic impact, you have to talk about. You also have to understand and discuss about the ecological damages. You can talk about the damages to the ecosystem. You can talk about the change in the salinity of the coastal areas, which also reduces the fertility of the soil, impacting agricultural activity. You can talk about large scale death, mass death of the marine organisms such as fishes and all, that affect the coastal community as it impacts their livelihood and all. So these are the points that we can talk about, and again all these things we have discussed with examples. So you can best is give example from December 26, 2004 tsunami from Indian Ocean, and similarly you can talk about 2011 tsunami from Japan as well. So this is how you could have structured your answer. In conclusion, you could have written that though, for example, there can be numerous different types of conclusion, but one conclusion I can think of, you can write about that though tsunami is relatively rare phenomena as compared to the earthquakes and volcanic eruption, though whenever they occur, the damage caused by them is of highest magnitude, and this is seen and witnessed in the recent tsunami that we have seen occurring in Japan and Indian Ocean region as such. Now again, since it is a geography question, make sure liberally you can use as many maps and diagrams, relevant obviously maps and diagrams as possible. So you can talk about the region where recently have seen tsunami, you can talk about the circum-Pacific ring area, you can discuss about the Sunda Trench area that is nearby the Sumatra island of Indonesia. So when we are talking about the regions where the tsunami form, make sure you just do not just state it by writing the names, you draw a small maps and put them in a square box to have a better structure of the answer. This is the first question. Now second question is again based on the solar energy, which has been continuously new since India has launched in an International Solar Alliance and also it has launched National Solar Mission. So question is directly explain briefly. Now you have two things, economic and ecological benefit. That means explain briefly the economic and ecological benefit of solar energy. Now especially here discussed in context of India with suitable example as such. So the structure of question can be simple. In introduction part, you can define what do you understand by the solar energy, and that can be simplest definition such as the energy that we obtain or generate by using the solar the sunlight, by using the solar insolation either through the solar heating or by using of photovoltaic cell is called as solar energy. In India, then we have discussed about that what is the economic benefit, what is the ecological benefit. So when you're writing the main body part, when you're describing about the benefit, make sure that you split the answer into two parts. In the first part, you will talk about the economic benefits, and second part you will talk about the ecological benefit. So when you're talking about economic benefits, there are various points you can write here. For example, you can talk about how it is beneficial in terms of employment generation, because we have solar energy where large number of people are getting employed, right? So you have employment generation. Second economic benefit is you have, we can write about that it will also help in this prosperity of farmers, because by the Kusum mission we can talk about that government of India has launched, farmers are able to sell solar energy that they are generating, excess solar energy, and they are using it to generate revenue for them. Also you can talk about the grid based and the off grid solar energy, and that is the economic benefit you can talk about. Similarly, you can talk about that today if you talk about the other methods of energy generation, electricity generation like thermal electricity you have, on which India is largely dependent upon. As the fossil fuels are becoming lesser and lesser, obviously obtaining them, extracting them can become difficult and can become a costly exercise. So dependency or increasing dependency on solar energy, because it is a renewable form of energy, will also in long term help us in saving our money, economic what you can call as country's wealth, in the form of what you can call as in form of either import of coal or in the extraction of coal. So those money we can save here. So these are several economic benefits you can think of. Ecological benefits are numerous, obviously, because it is a renewable form of energy. So it have a zero carbon footprint, because as compared to oil, natural gas, crude oil, coal, it releases almost negligible amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. That is the ecological benefit. Second ecological benefit also you can think of is from the perspective of what you can call as less consumption of water. Because you talk about thermal power plant, it not only releases huge amount of CO2, it also consumes a heavy amount of water, and as you know that the water scarcity is becoming a critical problem in India. So in long term it will also help us in saving water, which can be used for other various purposes as such. Similarly, we talk about other ecological benefit. It can be because the mining related extraction is not required in the solar energy, so the damages that happens to the what you can call as the groundwater, damages that happens to the fertile soil, damages that happens to the forest, because if coal mines are in forest area, you have to cut down the entire forest, deforestation occurs due to mining. So all these can be minimized, and this is how we can explain the ecological benefit as such, right? And also we talk from the consumer perspective, solar energy is becoming much more competitive in nature, because the per unit cost of production in electricity production by solar energy has fallen down significantly, and today it stands somewhere about 2 rupees per unit as such. So that is also in future, if we invest more and more in the solar energy sector, obviously the per unit cost that has to be borne by consumer can also reduce. That also you can write as the economic benefit as such. So by giving example, you can give the real life example, recent examples that you might have read across in newspapers to substantiate your point. But overall, this is how you would have structured your answer. Third question again is related to economic geography, where they are specifically asking about non-farm primary activities. First part. Second, how are these activities related to the geographic features in India? Now, see, it is a very interesting question. Whatever they are asking, they are trying to relate it with India, so that earlier the problem was that UPSC was not asking that much question from Indian geography. Now the a static part of the question, a static part of the syllabus, which is part of world geography or physical geography, that is being linked with the Indian geography as such. Here you can see a clear linkage between economic geography and physiographical features in India. Again, as you can see, UPSC is specifically emphasizing that whenever you are writing or addressing any part of the question, make sure that you substantiate those with examples as such. So what are non-farm primary activities? So primary activities, we know, largely is activity that is related to mining activities, exploration activities and all that. So non-farm primary activities means what? Agriculture, for example, is a primary activity. So agriculture and allied activities we have to skip. We do not have to address about this. We have to focus on non-farm. Non-farm means 3-4 activities we can think of. Like you have mining, you can think of forestry, okay, or forest-based activities. You can think of aquaculture, that is fisheries, aquaculture or marine fishing, so fisheries, right? You can think of hunting, gathering, though it is not practiced to that much extent, but still it is a non-farm primary activities. So these all you have to highlight that these are the activities which can be referred as non-farm primary activities. How are these activities related to physiographical features? So you have to link with the physiographical regions of India, which is numerous. For example, you have the mountains, that is Himalayas we are talking about. You have plains, Great Plains of India we are talking about. You have plateau region, right? We are talking about. We have the coastal plain. We have islands. So all of these are basically what the different physiographical region of India as such. That is the standard part of your syllabus, basic static part of syllabus. So link all these activities, which kind of activities can be related to each of the regions. So if you look at the plateau, you can link it to the mining activities, where you can talk about that how in the peninsular plateau, we can give example of Chotanagpur plateau, where we have huge reserves of coal, we have huge reserves of iron ore, we have huge reserves of manganese, and we have bauxite mining, we have, for example, mining of mica and such, and then you can relate to the peninsular plateau region. In Deccan plateau also you can talk about, you have iron ore reserves, you have gold reserves, right? You can talk about in the central highland part of the plateau, where you have Aravallis mountain and all that. There you have limestone, you have sandstone, you have marble, you have this cement based factories and all because of this. So mining is related to the plateau region directly. You have to show on the map of India, you have to here draw the map of India and show which region is where and which kind of activity is being practiced. Second, forest based activities, obviously you can link it to the mountainous region of Himalayas, also the northeastern India. You can link with the western Ghats of India, where due to the huge forest reserves, you have a lot of activities that is carried out here. For example, in these forested areas, you have tribal population that is largely using minor forest produce for their own livelihood, such as we talk about central part of India, in the Vindhya range, in the Satpura ranges, you have the forest which is being used for collection of minor forest produce such as fruits. You can talk about tendu leaves that is being collected by tribals and that is used for the beedi manufacturing, and that is how they sustain their livelihood. You have mahua tree that is used for the making of liquor, alcohol. That is how also tribals are using this. So this forest based activity, you can talk about Himalayas, where you have the pine forest, where the pine trees are used for extracting of oil. It is used for extraction of what you can call as this substances which is used in the paint industry. It is used in the manufacturing of the turpentine oil, for example. So all this is how you can relate with this. Similarly, aquaculture, fisheries, you can relate to two things, that is the island part and the coastal areas region. Like for example, you can talk about how almost all the coastal states of India, whether it is Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, Odisha, West Bengal, they are known as a hot spot of fishing activities. You can talk about fishing also in the plain areas, especially you talk about the freshwater fisheries in the rivers of India, such as Ganga River, Yamuna River, Krishna Godavari system. Large scale aquaculture is being practiced. Freshwater fishes are grown there. So that is aquaculture and fishing. Hunting and gathering, again, you can link it to the mountainous areas and the plateau area, especially related to the tribal belts in the eastern part of India or the central part of India, where we see a large scale hunting and gathering being practiced, where tribals still are dependent on the ancient way of collecting their food produce and also sustaining their livelihood as such. So this is how you have to first of all talk about what are non-farm primary activities on the map of India, show all these physiographical region and connect each of these physiographical region with the related economic activities as such, primary activities as such. This is how you could have talked about and structured your answer. Next question is related to give a geographical explanation of the distribution of offshore oil reserves of the world, how are they different from the onshore occurrence of oil reserve? Now this is 15-mark question, so you have to start with the definition. Okay, what is the offshore oil reserves? Offshore oil reserves, you know that these are the oil reserves that is found in the coastal areas in the sea. For example, this is India, so this is where you have the coast, and nearby Mumbai, as we know, the field is called as Bombay High. Near the eastern coast, you have Krishna Godavari basin as such. So the oil and natural gas that you find in these areas, these are example of offshore oil reserves. They are not found on the continental land masses. They are found somewhere in the sea basin or ocean basin as such. You can talk about North Sea area, for example. Huge amount of gas reserves you'll find here. Oil reserves you'll find here. You can talk about Persian Gulf region that was recently in use. So Gulf of Mexico you can talk about. Venezuelan basin you can talk about. So all these areas are basically offshore oil reserves. First you can define it. You can show the distribution by drawing the map of India and then talking about all these area we have discussed. Again we have to highlight. Okay, we can look at the Persian Gulf, for example. So you have Persian Gulf, right? You have North Sea. You have Gulf of Mexico. You have Venezuelan continental shelf. Venezuelan continental shelf. So these are the areas you can show on the world map. Distribution, definition we have discussed. In second part, we have talked about how are they different from the onshore. So we have to first of all define what is the onshore oil reserve. So onshore oil reserves simply are those oil reserves which are found on the continental land masses. Continental land masses, largely, for example, in the desert area, you can think of, example, in Saudi Arabia, UAE, Oman, Thar desert of Rajasthan. These are found also in the, for example, northeastern part of India in the plains. So you have the sedimentary plains, example. Recently we have discovered oil also in the Balia, Uttar Pradesh, where you have the Gangetic plain region. So these kind of resources which are found on the continental land masses, with example you can substantiate, are referred as onshore oil reserve. Then you can simply make a table. On one side you can talk about offshore oil reserve, other side you can talk about onshore oil reserves, and then you compare how they are different. So there are various bases on which you can compare them. For example, in terms of economic or finance, we can talk about that it is much more difficult financially, or we can say it is much more expensive financially to extract oil resources from the offshore areas. Onshore area, because it is easily accessible, the financial cost is relatively low. You can talk about environmental damage in offshore areas because it is present in the sea area. Whatever oil spills happen, whatever accident happen, it has a direct bearing on the marine life, marine organisms. Example you can give of the incident or accident that we have seen in the British Petroleum Deep Water Horizon, very famous incident. So that we can talk about. Third, you can also talk about, here we have the problem in delineating the control, because you know that oceanic areas, sea areas are always contested many times between several countries. An example you can give of South China Sea. In South China Sea, whatever oil and gases are present in the sea areas, what we can call as in the offshore regions, it is contested by China. So in Vietnam, you have this problem. With Philippines, you have this problem. China is contesting that this actually belongs to them. So you have improper delineation of the control maritime zones. That is not the problem in the onshore basin, because they are lying completely within the territorial control of any particular country. So this also is another difference that you have. Plus, fourth point also you can write that in terms of the what you can call as risk, it is much more riskier to construct oil field, gas field and oil and gas well drilling in the offshore areas as compared to onshore area, because offshore areas are continuously affected by various different atmospheric phenomena, such as you have storms, you have tsunamis, you have cyclones. That is why it becomes quite difficult to manage it, and the risk to the life of people working here is much more higher as compared to people who work on the onshore region. So this is on various parameters, then you can talk about the differences. So this is simply, we could have talked about the distribution of the offshore oil reserves of the world and how they differ from the onshore oil reserves. Next we have a question that is related to the this what you can call as themes being talked these days in everywhere, that is AI, artificial intelligence. They're asking how can AI and drones, right, be effectively used along with GIS and RS technique in location and urban planning. So first of all, in the intro part of your question or answer, basically you have to discuss each of these. Four terms are there. So what is AI, what is drone, What is GIS? What is RS? AI is simply artificial intelligence. Briefly, you can talk about this. Drones, you'll talk about, okay, how drones have changed the entire understanding of the landscape, because we can do aerial surveys at a very small scale, at very closer to the ground surface. GIS is geographical information system, and RS is remote sensing. Largely, you can talk about the use of satellites and all that. So when these technology, when we are combining together, you can then divide your answer into 4 parts. That is use of AI, use of drones, use of GIS, and use of RS, and then few points about each of them you can write here. So artificial intelligence, especially you have to talk in the perspective of urban planning. So AI can be used to understand how traffic moves in a particular city in the urban areas at a particular point of time. Based on that, transportation planning, urban infrastructure planning can be done. For example, if you know that from point A to point B is where you have the maximum density of traffic, in that case you can think of building some alternative infrastructure such as metros and all that. So we know that metro is a very expensive project. That means you cannot make it or construct it anywhere you want in the urban cities. You need to have metros in those areas where traffic density is highest, and that can be understood by using the artificial intelligence, right? Apart from that, AI can also use to understand the mathematical modeling. That means how population is getting distributed in a particular cities. So based on the population distribution, even uneven population distribution, further planning related to the infrastructure can be done. For example, water based consumption we can talk about, or planning related to the garbage collection, waste collection. We can talk about planning related to the construction of houses, settlements, and all this kind of thing. So various ways are there how you can use AI these days. Drones can be simply used to do the aerial survey as a secondary source of confirmation. If you want to know something about the aerial areas, we can also use drones to understand at a smaller scale that how urban landscape is undergoing changes. For example, which area is facing deforestation, where we are facing crunch of water, right? For example, where the lakes are being continuously shrunk. You can also use drones to understand the population, this problem of pollution as such. In which area you have higher extent of pollution. This can also be used to understand that which regions of urban areas are where we are having deficiency or lack of waste collection, right? And all these kind of things. So that is the thing. GIS and RS again can be used to have a layered information, and when you are overlapping multiple different themes on a single map. For example, traffic movement. You can talk about the atmospheric pollution level. You can talk about the relief of that particular area, how the height and of this region changes, how we can ensure the proper development in that area. So availability of water, for example, availability of housing, for example. So when you have a layered arrangement of all this together, it can help us in locating and have a proper urban planning. And then in conclusion, you can write that all this collectively can give us a much more comprehensive understanding of the evolution of urban landscape, especially in context of India, where a large number of people are migrating to the urban centers, urban areas in the search of job, better employment opportunities. And we have seen that the percentage of population of India in urban areas has continuously increased, reaching all the way up to 35 to 38%, expected to further rise in future. And that is where these technologies can play a very significant role in have a better urban planning, where the resources can be effectively utilized and taking into consideration the demands of population as such. This is one way how you can conclude the answer as such. Also, in other way of concluding is you can talk about the major challenges being faced, especially in the urban areas of India, where we are facing large scale crisis in terms of water scarcity, in terms of very frequent flooding. Urban flooding is the term that we are using here, in terms of urban heat island, in terms of the traffic woes faced by millions and millions of people. So obviously in this context, the use of these technologies can be revolutionary in the nature in the coming time in the future as such. So various ways are there how we could have tackled this question. Now coming to the next question, simply it is related to the geomorphology part, where they have asked that discuss how the changes in shape and size of continents and ocean basin of the planets take place. That means basically they're asking that how continents and oceans are of the earth undergoes changes, due to which process? Plate tectonics or tectonic movement of crustal masses as such. So here first of all you can start simply by properly defining that what do you understand by tectonic movement of plate tectonics. So you can talk about that as per the recent theory of plate tectonics that came somewhere in the 1970s with the help of several scientists. You can name, if you remember them, Morgan, you have Wilson, you have Mackenzie, Parker, Hess, and all that. They understood that the plates of the earth keeps on continuously moving, and when they move, they result into significant changes in the continents and ocean basins of the earth as such. Briefly, if you want, in single line, not in lot of words, in 10 to 20, 15 words, you can define also what do you understand by the term plate. So it is a broken, fragmented part of lithosphere that is the uppermost region of the earth. So that is the first point. Second, we have discussed how the changes are taking place. That means in simplest term, you would have studied about three types of plate interaction. That is convergence, which again is of O convergence, OC convergence, CC convergence. You would have heard about divergence, that is CC divergence, O divergence. So basically, these five things is what you have to describe in the answer of this particular question. That means you can talk about, and again, you have to discuss all these with a relevant example. So you can talk about that how oceanic convergence. For example, you can think of the area like in the Indo-Australian plate sinking beyond the Pacific plate. There we have seen formation of island groups, volcanic island groups, such as islands of Indonesia, islands of Philippines. So that is example of what? The changes in the continental land masses, changes in the ocean land masses. You can talk about OC convergence that is going on between the Pacific plate and the South American, North American plate, Eurasian plate, where you have seen formation of volcanic mountains like Andes mountain in South America. You have Rocky mountains, Cascade mountains in North America. So all of these are again affecting what? The change of the continental land masses as such. And also whenever you are having CC convergence, for example, you can easily give example of Indian and Eurasian plate. We know that Indian plate is pushing against the Eurasian plate, and as Indian plate pushes against the Eurasian plate, what happens? First of all, obviously, due to compression of the rocks, the size of Indian plate will get reduced. For example, it is believed by geographers that almost 500 kilometers of reduction we have seen in the case of Indian plate due to continuous push against the Eurasian plate. That is basically what? Change in the size of continent. Shape, obviously, earlier Indian plate was something like this. Now, due to convergence on the entire northern part of India, we see the rise of a fold mountain that we call as Himalaya. So this has resulted in the change in the shape of Indian landmass. Also, due to this continuous convergence, Indian plate has tilted from the northwest to southeast. Thus, that is why you have the change in the shape also, where from the flat shape it has become tilted shape like that. Similarly, we can talk about the CC divergence. We'll talk about the current movement going on in the Africa, where the entire African continent is being split apart into two land masses because you have convection current pulling this Africa in two directions. So what is happening here? You have formation of Rift Valley. So initially, earlier, few million years ago, this entire region of Africa was flat area, but now you have formation of Rift Valley. You have occurrences of volcanic activity in this area that also result into what? Into the configurational changes of the continental land masses. And then you can talk about O divergence, where you can give example of mid-Atlantic ridge. Give example of mid-Atlantic ridge. So what is happening along the mid-Atlantic ridge? The ocean basin is spread apart, and thus what is happening? The size of Atlantic Ocean is continuously increasing because the Atlantic Ocean is spreading at a rate of about 1.5 centimeters per year as such. And thus, due to this, also what is going on? You have the increase in the size of Atlantic Ocean, you have formation of new oceanic crust and all that. So largely these 5 plate interactions, that is part of your main course syllabus, is what you have to describe, and this is how you could have simply answered this question. Now, obviously you have a lot of scope to make maps and diagrams as well as various other processes to explain this question as such. The next question is related to discuss the distribution. Okay, discuss the distribution and density. Distribution and density of population in Ganga river basin with special reference to 3 things: land, soil and water. So we have talked about the population distribution and the density of population in the Ganga river basin. So the best way to start this question is by drawing the map of India. Right? You draw the map of India like this. You can draw the full map or you can draw the upper part based on your conveniences, and you will show that from the Uttarakhand you have the rise of Ganga river and is flowing all the way like this to the West Bengal as such. So this entire region all the way from Uttarakhand, especially after Haridwar, Rishikesh to the Uttar Pradesh, then further Bihar, small part of Jharkhand and then entire West Bengal is what we refer as a Ganga river basin. Now once we describe it, then you have to link it to the distribution and density of population. There you have an element of population geography. that will come into picture here. So based on the census figure or the recent figure from the other verified government sources, you can quote here that almost 40%, 45% of India's population, where population density is more than 1000 person per square kilometer, reside in the Ganga river basin, right? We can talk about the major cities here. You can talk about the most populated states of India are present here, like Uttar Pradesh, Bihar. You can talk about the ranking of West Bengal and all that. And then you'll talk about that what has led to development of such high population and high population density, and how it is related to the availability of land, soil and water. Then you will link first with the land, how land is favorable. We'll talk about the relief. You know that because it is a plain area, you have flat relief, and flat relief, it is much more easier to construct infrastructure, whether it is the motor transportation such as roadways, railways, whether it is about the what you can call as construction of the houses, tall buildings and all that. So because of the flat relief, it has helped people in having what you can call as a large number of buildings, a huge population settlement, a huge infrastructure and all that. That also has further attracted more and more number of people as such. Plus, not only the settlement, but also in such kind of flat terrain, it is much more easier to establish industries because the relief of land is favorable here. And as industrialization progresses, what happens? It serves as a magnet because it attracts a lot of what you can call as laborers from all across the world, and thus it also help in increasing population density. That is land you can talk about. Second, you can talk about the soil. We know that the entire Ganga plain basically is nothing but alluvial plain, right? It is the alluvial plain, and alluvial plain, it is the largest alluvial plain in the world, spanned across almost what you can call as 0.8 million square kilometer, roughly about 7.8 to 8 lakh square kilometer, and where you have very high fertile soil or soil with very high fertility, which support almost all type of crops. The alluvial soil that you have in the Ganga basin can support cereal crops such as rice, wheat. It can support cash crops such as sugarcane. It can support legumes. It can support flower, what you can call as oil seeds. It can support fruits, vegetables. So due to various different types of crops that can be grown here, and this is the region which can be called as the food basket of the India, which also has supported a huge population density by providing them adequate food to live and survive on. Third, you can link it to the water resources, because we know that the largest and longest river of India you have is the Ganga River. Ganga River, along with its tributaries, you can talk about such as Yamuna River, you have Ghagra, Gandak, Kosi. You can show actually on the map here all these rivers. So collectively, this river that is perennial in nature, you can talk about. Very, very important point, because these rivers are not dependent on rainfall. They are deriving their water from the melting of glaciers in the Himalayas, which is permanently going on. So throughout the year, you have what you can call as somewhat uniform flow of water available in the Ganga plain areas. This uniform availability of water helps in various ways. Example, it is not only the high fertile soil, it is also what you can call as the irrigation facilities available due to the perennial flow of water has attracted large number of people in this particular area. Also, water we know is required for humans to survive. So drinking water, fresh water we can say, because river water is fresh water, is available here. You can also talk about how water is very, very vital for the industries as well. So whether it is the leather industry, whether it is the paper and pulp industry, you have a textile industry. So all of these industries like jute textile you have here, all of these industries require and consumes huge volume of water, and because of this region, what happens? It attracts a lot of industries and a lot of people flock toward this area. Thus, you can link that how land, soil and water resources of the Ganga river basin has played a very important role in ensuring that both the density of population as well as overall population distribution within India remains highly skewed in the favor of Ganga plain. This is how you could have framed this particular answer as well. So overall, if you look at all these questions, we can see that these questions are basically again are kind of what you can call as interlinkage based questions, where you can see that UPSC this year has asked all these questions cannot be called as very tough and difficult question. These are what you can call as easy to moderate in nature, and that is why if you have properly understood and read the concepts in class, and you have properly understood the linkage between different concepts, then it becomes very easier to interlink them and frame a beautiful answer around this point. So again, the key takeaway is that by looking at this year question paper, you can say that again UPSC has emphasized upon static part and also at the same time They have emphasized upon clarity of the core concept. They also have focused upon interlinkages between different themes. For example, you can see question which has concepts deriving from population geography, question which has a concept deriving from the economic geography, as it has focused upon resources such. The concept also in this question itself, if you look beautifully, they have asked about a particular plain region, so that you have to study in the physiographical regions of India. So several concepts are interlinked here, several topics and chapters are interlinked here. Earlier also we have discussed how technology and economic geography is being overlinked, how technology and even urban planning, that is part of population geography, is getting interlinked here. We also have discussed earlier that how current affairs based changes that is taking place is being interlinked with what you can call as the static part, that is plate tectonics and all that. So this is how we have to understand and look at all the questions that is being asked. So the what you can call as the end, the question was of easy to moderate in nature. You have to focus going on further on the clarity of concept, especially core concept from geomorphology, climatology and oceanography as such, and then you would be able to properly frame good answer, given that you have properly practiced answer writing, you have given lot of mock tests and all that. That is all about the discussion for geography this subject for this particular area of maths. Thank you very much.